Today my guest is Blair Anderson, the Director of Technology for Shawnee Heights Unified School District located in Tecumseh, Kansas. Shawnee Heights has approximately 3,700 students from preschool through 12th grade and is dedicated to developing a community of independent and productive lifelong learners. In Blair's role, he provides direction and management for all the technology functions at Shawnee Heights. He is a security ambassador on the Cisco Gateway and was recently nominated for the 2021 Cisco Cybersecurity Defender of the Year Award. Hi Blair, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for this great opportunity, and I'm honored to share the great things that are happening with cybersecurity and education.
Absolutely, Blair. I'm really excited to talk to you today. Obviously, we're living in a pretty crazy world right now, and cybersecurity is in the headlines nearly every day. It's also at the top of every business leader's mind. There's a lot going on. Then you have COVID and remote work and remote learning. It's a lot for anyone to process and to deal with. So that kind of brings me to the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. Given your leadership position at Shawnee Heights Unified School District, how drastic do you see the technology leaders' priorities change in response to COVID-19 and remote learning?
When COVID-19 forced us into remote learning, I believe we were well prepared. We had the security in place to monitor and respond to any threats that might have harmed our users and devices, as well as the ability to filter devices from hitting network. Our students and staff were accustomed to using a learning management system for teaching and curriculum resources. And we also had a mobile device management solution in place to support our one-to-one devices and making sure that they remained updated, as well as provide the software and apps that were required during this time. We did face a few obstacles that forced us to rethink our priorities. The most significant was the purchase of hotspots for students who did not have reliable high-speed internet access, particularly in remote suburban areas with poor cell reception. We also had to purchase a few devices to deploy to our primary students that weren't fully one-to-one before the pandemic hit.
So Blair, how seamless was that transition? Was there a lot more to it? I know some organizations had it required a lot more effort. They weren't as prepared. So, how prepared were you and how seamless was it?
It was fairly seamless. In my opinion, we obviously put in some time after hours to kind of plan all this out and make sure it got rolled out. I'm proud of the IT department and all of our staff here at Shawnee Heights for the work that they put in to make sure that we could support the remote learning really without a drop off compared to what was happening in the classroom.
What a success story, Blair. Candidly, a lot of schools and organizations out there weren't as prepared for the pandemic and hadn't made the investments given they couldn't anticipate it. And it happened so fast, right? So they had to do things, a little differently, very, very quickly, and to be able to support the administrators and teachers and students and, amidst all the chaos. So, given that, what are some of the biggest technology challenges Shawnee Heights faced to ensure a safe, reliable, and high-performance learning environment?
Well, really, we have just a couple challenges that we are facing right now. One, we need to work with our local internet providers and then city and county elected officials to expand and be able to provide that affordable, and that's the key word, affordable, high-speed internet coverage so that families can support remote learning and or working from home. We found out that, a lot of our parents are starting to work from home as well. And if you have multiple kids, sometimes those internet connections were maxed out pretty easily. So they had to take shifts as to who could do classroom work versus work for their job. The second challenge that we face is recruiting and retaining our existing IT staff. As you know, that there's a plethora of remote jobs available that offer higher salaries that education can't always match. And then just the ability to work from home. So right now, we still require all of our staff to come in every day. And really, that's the best for customer service, I think. But we do have to compete with what's going on out there in the world. The third thing is just securing the funding that we need to keep our devices and then our network refreshed every 4 to 5 years. As you know, we continually need to expand and sustain our security systems that we already have in place to meet the requirements from cybersecurity insurance providers and then obviously state federal guidelines. And then lastly, I think the biggest challenge is what effect has the pandemic had on and will continue to have on education long term? Will we need to go remote or will we need to go hybrid at any given time? And then just supporting staff and students who maybe prefer to work and learn remotely compared to being in a school 8 hours a day behind a desk. So I think those are some challenges that are going to face all K-12 education.
As a follow-up to that, you mentioned kind of the hybrid learning environment that a lot of schools are utilizing now or headed towards. Has Shawnee Heights decided to, stick with that, or are they going to go back to in person, or is it going to be something in the middle, or are they still just trying to figure out which way?
I think we're still just reviewing what worked best during the pandemic, what worked best prior to that, and then looking at the research, and then just kind of taking our time to explore all our options and then make a well-educated decision.
Yeah, that sounds like a very reasonable and thoughtful approach. I think I'll tell you, it's one of the reasons for some optimism is you've seen how the leadership of many of these public sector organizations like K-12s and higher ed have responded to what was a very challenging time with the pandemic, and all of a sudden being thrust into remote learning or remote work, and still being able to get still being able to support the teachers being able to put together lesson plans, and taking a thoughtful approach to being sure that they're able to teach their students and still move them along, so they get their education in and do that well while still being safe. So it's interesting, and it really does give you, a lot of optimism.
Yep, and I think the key word you said is parents. Obviously, we know a lot happened on the teacher end and on the student end, but really the parents were rock stars in all of this, having to deal with a change in their own work environment, but also a change in their students' education process and just managing all of that. So I know that we appreciate all that they did during this pandemic.
Yeah, that's a great point. So now that you and Shawnee Heights have made several Cisco-based technology and security investments that you're using to enhance your detection and response posture and capability, how does SecureX play a role in that, and what outcomes can you share with us?
I'd say before we made the significant investment into Cisco Security products, we had multiple systems that just didn't integrate together. And that was constantly requiring us to address threats or re-image computers frequently. But since then, we spend significantly less time removing those threats from devices. And then we also have greatly improved our security. And I think that's key because when you don't have to wipe a machine or take a machine away from either a staff or a student for a significant amount of time to maybe, remove the threads or to wipe them clean, that allows them to do their work on a daily basis and not have to worry about that. But since we've done the Cisco Security products, we've seen a huge increase of the threats that have been blocked. And I'll give you a couple examples over the last 30 days. One of the platforms we use is Cisco Umbrella. We've seen 196 million DNS requests with 11.2 million of those blocked.
Wow.
Over 11,000 were security blocks, 3,200 malware blocks, 3,000 phishing blocks, and 170 crypto mining blocks. Just mind blowing when you look at those numbers. What were we facing that we didn't even know that we were facing at the time?
Yeah.
And so it's really opened our eyes to what's happening on our network. Another platform that we've integrated recently is Cisco email security. So we know that email is probably the #1 threat in the world. So again, in that 30-day time period, we had 262,000 emails come in, with 81,000 of those being blocked for reputation, spam, email spoofing, phishing attempts, malware detection. And again, all that was done automatically. So that's kind of taken a lot of the burden off of my staff and having to deal with email concerns every day, and just let the system handle that. And then we have Cisco Secure Endpoint installed on all of our devices, which is about 3,700 devices throughout the district. And so we had visibility into 254 million files and over 223 million IPs, with 93% of the threats blocked automatically. So just powerful data there that just shows what investing in a top-notch security portfolio will do for a district.
Yeah, those are some pretty amazing results. One of the things you said in there that caught me was this: you were talking about how how you viewed things, and it seems that it kind of out in the marketplace, most everybody's moving away from the idea of multiple disparate security products, trying to get them all together and integrate and work and be able to acknowledge and view and correlate all the things that go on in between all those different products. Where you're kind of seeing, like with the Cisco Security portfolio, they have SecureX, and it integrates all those pieces and brings all that data into a single dashboard. Do you guys use SecureX for something like that?
Yeah, that was SecureX was one of the things that really drove our decision when we were looking at this, because we wanted that single pane of glass so that we could have that visibility into our entire portfolio and didn't have to go system to system or remove this threat on one and then deal with it the other. So it doesn't matter where the threat comes in at. It could be Cisco umbrella, it could be email, it could be on the device. We can see exactly where that threat came in and what systems it touched, and then it just reduces the amount of time that we have to take to remedy that.
Those are some amazing results and outcomes. So, given that, how does your leadership view your technology and security investments so far?
Our board of education and our administrative team values our department's kind of commitment and their vision, and obviously their foresight in providing a very highly reliable and secure network to support the classroom environment. And that's the key word, is just making sure that our staff and students can do their job in the classroom. A recent example was many districts were notified by their cybersecurity providers that an endpoint detection and response was required moving forward. You stop and think about that. For most districts, that's a large and an unbudgeted cost. But fortunately for Shawnee Heights, we recognized that need and value for this kind of protection 5 years ago when we acquired a Cisco Security enterprise license agreement. So they're very happy that we are prepared and we didn't have to make that sudden shift this summer just to secure that.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me when we talked a couple of weeks ago was you're talking how you were able to roll this out and do all these things without largely affecting the administration, teaching, and student communities. And in fact, in many cases, it's an enabler.
I think the key is finding a solution that just runs transparently in the background. You don't want a lot of pop-ups. You don't want a lot of distractions. So I think that has been the biggest benefit for our users.
So I guess it'd be pretty fair to say that there's been a pretty strong ROI so far.
Yeah, I mean, you got to stop and think when a person drives into our district or walks, gets out of their car and comes in. I mean, Cisco is the key to everything that happens within our school district, but also outside our district, because it supports more than just our users and devices. It makes the door access system work. It connects the fire and building alarms, the HVA systems, and the security cameras, in addition to providing, obviously, the network access. So, and then we've just seen that Cisco continues to expand their product line, and then obviously security is on the forefront of all of that. And so having these top of line solutions have allowed us to kind of focus on assisting our employees and students rather than having to worry about outages or crashes or bottlenecks. So it's been a great investment on our part.
Yeah, I often ask, because it's just one of the strongest references you can give, right? Is would you make those investments again?
Yeah, and we're getting ready to, we did a 5-year license agreement. So that expires here this fall. So we are getting ready to renew that. And there's no hesitation at all on renewing that. We'll do it again in a heartbeat.
So as you look out into the future, obviously with the attack surfaces have doubled, the number of threat vectors is multiplied. There's lots of things going on in our very chaotic world, and it's impacted, organizations around the world and K-12s like Shawnee Heights. Is there some things, without publicly disclosing too much, right? Some things that you're looking at doing in the near future that maybe our audience can gain some insight off of?
Some of the funding for schools is decreasing in some states, and so that's always a concern. But for us, it's just using the staff that we have and continuing to develop them as security kind of engineers, because a lot of districts can't afford to hire security engineers from a salary perspective. I mean, I get it; they're well worth it, but they would be making a whole lot more than probably most directors would in school districts. So we just have to find other ways to address that. Obviously, the increase in cyber threats, continue to increase every day, and trying to disrupt the educational process. So it's just staying on top of that and staying in tune to what's happening out there in the world that might impact corporations, but also school districts, and then just applying some of that. Obviously, for us, it's just finding the funding for cybersecurity initiatives and continuing to expand our portfolio to keep up with what's happening. And then you've got the regular just security training for your existing staff, but also for your students and faculty to provide some of that training that they need to know what to look out for on the day-to-day basis to kind of help us with this. So my advice for us is just, you have to constantly advocate, obviously in a professional manner, to leadership about some of the security concerns. And then obviously just the need to purchase those security solutions to help your district. And then it's just being transparent with your staff and students about what threats are facing your district and how you're going to go about dealing with those. And then obviously communication is needed frequently with the key stakeholders.
Yeah, Blair, I really like that last part, spending so much time with school districts and, from coast to coast, and listen to them talk about, we have to do more with less. They can't hire the people they need to hire, or they can't keep them trained and retained, or, there's just a lot more happening now that requires more diligence, more response, etc. And that really has put, a unique challenge in front of many of the technology and security staff for these school districts and organizations as a whole, and it's really had a very, very big impact. And you tie that in tandem with the pandemic and et cetera, and it's really a very challenging environment. And we always talk about with your leadership, you need to be transparent and thoughtful, and one of those is explain to them that security is not a destination. It's a journey. And that journey is going to require more spending. It's going to require more diligence. It's probably going to require more resources as you go along. And also, adding in that and a very thoughtful approach and making incremental changes as you go along to ensure that you can provide a safe learning environment for the kids like you do at Shawnee Heights. So I think that's one of the things that I applaud you for, and I really appreciate you sharing.
And I would say, when I started in this position 17 years ago, we didn't talk about security a lot. Obviously, it wasn't as bad back then as it is today. But I think, as security threats started to be known and everybody was kind of scared to talk about them, and obviously you didn't really probably communicate that out. But I think that shift has really changed, at least the last 5 or 6 years. Because I always thought, man, if I got hit with a security threat, I'd probably get fired the next day. Not just one district or one business. It's, everybody's having to deal with it. And so I think it's just being comfortable with that and just letting people know what you're doing to keep them secure. And you're doing the best that you can. And sometimes, that isn't going to stop somebody from getting in. So.
Yeah, look, I really appreciate today you being so transparent and sharing some of the amazing outcomes that you and your team have been able to achieve there at Shawnee Heights, and creating a wonderful learning environment for those students, and also sharing many of those experiences with our audience today. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity.